file the agenda. Any discussion? All in favor? Just real quick, I want to break from the agenda just to update the commission. Yesterday, on behalf of the city, I went to Frankfurt and met with the governor, and we were the recipients of a $500,000 EPA brownfield assessment grant. I want to thank our Community Economic Development Department for Chris Pullen and Catherine Utzinger for their efforts to get that done. It's pretty significant. It's the largest brownfield assessment grants administration in the EPA's history. Communities across the nation were able to receive that, and I'm glad that Ashland's one of them.
That's helpful, man.
All right. With that, we'll move on to old business. All in favor? Item C, second reading and final adoption of an ordinance entitled an ordinance to city of Ashland effective any ordinance number 169 series of 1995 as previously amended, commonly referred to as the stop sign ordinance, authorizing the removal of the stop sign eastbound on Bath Avenue at its intersection with 24th Street, northbound on 23rd Street at its intersection with Central Avenue, and authorizing the placement final both sides of Bath Avenue from 22nd Street to 25th Street.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Item F, second reading and final adoption of the ordinance entitled an ordinance of the city of Ashland, Texas, creating the position of engineer and superintendent assistant, adopting the job description for said position, and amending the authorized positions list in the classification and compensation plan as adopted by ordinance number 31, series of 2023 as previously amended.
Any discussion? All in favor? Consider.
Creating and adopting a resolution adopting, authorizing, approving the course of action recommended by the city manager and item material in the city.
Discussion? All in favor? Any business?
Item A, appointment. The mayor requests the board's concurrence on his appointment of Roseman and Stafford to the Ashland Housing Authority Board to fulfill the unexpired term of Dr. Desmond Barrett, set to expire on October 1, 2023.
Just want to mention Stafford has spent many years as a advocate for children that actually school system for as a resource officer, and she is a perfect candidate for this position. I think she'll be very happy for the children. All in favor? And the business?
Moving on to the budget, Mayor, just real quick, the secretary reminder, we met on the 6th of March in a public session, and you all gave some really broad guidance, focused on balanced budget, maintaining what we have, long-term infrastructure, and carryover sheets and the things that they want to focus on this year. That gets sent to finance. Finance asks their questions about it, reconcile it, see what we can or cannot fund the budget. So there's always some really good discussion and education both ways. And then once the vast majority of that gets reconciled, then we have some big curveballs this year. Of course, the pay compensation study we released it with. And then Tony, Michelle, and the staff really, and Bobby and her here, going to really sort of fine tuning of the budget, and that's how we got here today. So I think Tony, Michelle, and the staff have done an excellent job. Looking forward to some really good conversations today. And most importantly, we put the guidance in this guy put out. So with that, I'll turn over to Tony, Michelle, now. The Commission City Manager, the Mayor, and the City.
What you have in plan for work here, for summary, we also have a budget on it. And we put that back into the to continue on what the city manager said, I think in the last public work session, the DOC's direction was to continue the current projects that we have, not to add on. So I would say maybe 90% of this budget is continue the current projects that we have. I don't see my answer. But to get it started off with, moving all these, kind of like the audit. All these start out with city law, and then we go through the with the city law, there's 56 articles. Also includes a cost of living allowance based on the employee cost of labor index. That's 1.3 million.
I'm glad you said that because I had a little note to ask how much that was.
Yeah, just to tell you the whole thing, we was actually going to put that in there, and I told someone to, and got it all bound up, and I
No
looked
worries.
at it, and it's like,
You knew we'd ask.
exactly. That's right.
And that does include all benefits, everything.
Okay, thank
It's
you.
Uh,
all-inclusive.
That is an all-in cost. And I'd also point out that FY '23 in terms of percent was 35.30, so it's really not, it's not moved up that much.
That's something that caught my eye because, obviously we know we've made some adjustments and we did this study and that. So the percentage of the budget really hasn't moved though, right?
No,
With the,
no.
so how is that? We've, with set positions and everything.
The percentage of the budget, well, I think
Well,
Mr.
you
Grubb
got-
said it's up 1.4% in personnel.
Operating
Right.
costs and this and
Right.
that, sometimes that'll move up and that'll
I
fluctuate.
just, yeah, I was just thinking like, took care of all these positions out and then was good. You would think that would then move up. I had been thinking about that going into this process. Are those costs gonna be significantly more percent of the total budget? But it doesn't look like.
1.4%.
Yeah, because.
Not if the budget goes up.
Because supplies, utilities, chemicals, all of that has went up significantly.
Okay.
So that's just, again, that's just a component of several different line items. But I was pleased to see it somewhat flat. The next section on the bottom of page 1 is Kentucky retirement. It's at 6.8 million, and for context, FY '23 was also 6.8 million. It's worth mentioning, I think, the rates are trending down. They are down for FY '24 budget. And some good news is they are also projecting out FY '25. And the rates are going down. And right now, the Kentucky retirement system is monitoring their return on investments and their insurance costs, but they project over $750,000 for us, for reduction in the percent for next year.
Oh, wow.
So that
That's
was,
significant,
that was
yeah.
a good news story.
Well, knowing where we were just 4 years ago, and it was a completely different set of circumstances.
You know, it was
projections.
going up 12%
Yeah.
for 10 years,
Yeah.
so I was kind of surprised. The League of Cities, we actually redone this back when I was on the personnel, because they didn't put the date, so we thought, and a lot of other cities thought, that rate was savings, was then correction is for the next year, so.
I wondered, because I think in the audit meeting, I think you said it might be 750,000, and I
That's what I
thought,
thought at the time, so, so for next year, we are
Oh,
looking at
good.
a decent savings, so that'll
All right.
actually help us plan and
They had a
money that we
typo.
can invest.
That's a big one.
We had a screenshot of it, and we went back and it's like, oh, whoops, it was for 25.
something to look forward to, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely. So, if you'll turn on page 2, real quick, employee healthcare costs, it continues to stabilize. When I say employee health, specific stop loss and aggregate stop loss.
Could I ask you, what does it mean, health plan transfer per employee? What is that?
That's the amount that the city transfers,
Oh, okay.
$19,500
Okay.
out of the various funds per employee to go over to the employee's health
cover the-
Okay.
insurance fund, and that covers all our healthcare costs.
Okay.
Because you can have some employees that have no cost, where we're self-insured, and they've not went to the doctor, their cost could be $100. But you could have somebody that was sicker in the year, and theirs could be 30,000.
Okay.
So the goal of like the health fair that we just had, is to
Yes.
have people be proactive.
Yes.
Because everybody's got an interest in driving that down.
Yes, and to kind of put this in context, when I
It's a
say
great
this,
thing, but I didn't get.
I went.
to put this in context, when I say this thing is stabilized, I jotted down some notes here. FY '19 was 7 million. FY '20 was 6. And then we get into COVID, it dropped down to 3.72. FY '22 is back up to 5, but it's still creeping up. It doesn't have the acceleration that we've seen in the past. So.
And really, there's no way to predict that.
No.
There's no way to predict how much we're gonna.
We've tried a regression analysis at times, but yeah, sometimes it's hard. I mean,
Yeah.
someone gets sick or
Right.
it's.
The actuarial table.
Well,
Yeah.
again, with costs even coming down at all,
Yeah.
knowing the rate of increase of inflation just in healthcare,
Well, yeah, and I cannot say enough kudos to 25, 26 years ago when the city went self-insured. I mean, that's way it helped us.
Significantly.
And you all have put a lot of things in the plan to encourage people to be healthy, like, low-cost prescription drugs for cholesterol and diabetic and, stuff to keep the cost low, to encourage our employees to actually go out and get these drugs.
We went through all of this at work, and even decisions like, which sound iffy at first, like going to urgent care instead of maybe ER, and like informing people about those decisions. Obviously, you do what's going to be safe in the moment to take care of yourself, your family, but, little decisions like that can make a big difference.
Sure does. A few years ago, we had people going to the ER just for
Yeah.
little small things. And we put some steerage in there. It costs a little bit more to go to ER, and so we kind of pushed them over to urgent care or something like that.
And we're even encouraging them to do the $30 blood thing from King's Daughters, because we will pay the $30 because it catches diabetes and everything so much earlier, and it saves us a lot for the health insurance, because it's like $1,200 if you go to the hospital and do it. And so we pay the full 30 for the employees.
The next section is, we're still on page 2 there, is debt. The city's citywide debt is sitting at $33.5 million. Prior year debt was $36.8. It's down $3,252,000. The debt is trending down. In terms of annual debt service, it's $4.4 million, or 4.6% for the budget. I would also note that the 2023 per capita debt is $1,590. That's down from the prior year, $1,715.
So there's also a debt percentage of our debt versus total property value of the city. Is that right? We talked about that last year.
Yeah, I think we've talked about that before,
Right.
yeah.
Right.
Also, I have a note on here, if you can look down, kind of down towards the bottom. It's the fifth one up from the bottom, or I'm sorry, I can't, fourth one. It's loan radio read meters. Department of Finance, we monitor these and look at these on a frequent basis, at least quarterly. But we'll be paying off that radio read meter in July. It has an interest rate of 4.265. And had a maturity date of 2029, but we can save $130,000 by paying that off.
Great.
So that's what we intend to do with your all's approval.
Wonderful.
I can turn over to page 3 real quick. Again, this is citywide, but we're talking about capital investments in the city. Capital investments to the Department of Finance, it's anything that costs over $5,000 and has a useful life of 36 months or longer. And it's budgeted at $34.1 million, and that is up from the prior year of $27.5. And as you can see, we continue to strongly invest in the city. But these numbers here, again, this is a citywide statement that I'm talking about. We will unpackage some of these in the appropriate fund that they are. But I will just point out a few of them. One of them is the ARPA fund. It's $13 million, and we've dedicated that to utility work. And the next one, down to the very bottom, the 11.1 million, I just try to get some of the larger numbers. That's the capital purchase improvement fund, and that fund purchases equipment and the such for the general fund. And just real quick, I'll just name off a few of them. I think we're budgeted a street sweeper at $325K. From what I understand, that's much needed. The Winchester Avenue project, which I know a lot of people are excited about, it's budgeted at $5.5 million. Oakview Road culvert, $300K. I'm pretty sure people will be excited about getting that fixed. We have a fire brush attack truck at $350K. Police patrol vehicles at $225K. Police tactical response and rescue vehicle at $290K. And a fire aerial truck progress payment of $450,000, and a fire mobile air trailer at $226K. And a lot of these are, those numbers, I know are large, a lot of them are actually funded by grant. turn over to page 4 real quick. This is federal and state grant funding that the city receives to operate various funds and actually to pay for some of these investments that I just went over. But it's 17.4 million or 24.6% of the budget. And I've got a note here just to some of the newer ones that are in here. Again, it's the 4.9 million on the 13th to 18th Street traffic roundabout parking design and construction. I also point out the Amber grant for the conference center at $1 million. I think a lot of kudos to Commissioner Clark. I think she was instrumental in getting that. Safe Streets and Roads grant, street intersection safety, $400,000. Assistance to firefighter grant for that brush truck that I spoke of just earlier, $315,000. And an assistance grant to the firefighters for the mobile air trailer, $205,000. And the previous year, we had the ARPA revenue here. It now has its own separate fund, so it's legally required for us to have it in a separate fund. So it'll be the first year for that. The next page will be page 5. And now we'll start going into each fund. And our first primary fund is the general fund that you all know accounts for public works, police, fire, and such. It's budgeted at $33.3 million. Last year's budget, or prior year fiscal year budget, was 33.9. It's a fractionally down, but it's pretty much flat. Always hit these 5 points. There's about 5 revenue accounts in the general fund that we monitor that makes up about 80% of the general fund revenue. And the very first one is the property tax, and it's budgeted at 2.9%. We do have or recommend a rate modification of 4% on that. Generally, 4% would be anywhere in the neighborhood of about $154,000. I thought this number was kind of cool, but the 23 assessment base is $1.176 billion. It's up $20.5 million from the previous year. Those are all good news stories.
Wow.
And I've got a few more here. The next category that we monitor, the insurance premium tax, fiscal year 24 is 4.7. That is up from the prior year of 4.3. And it's worth noting there's 1,873 accounts. In the prior year, we had 1,800 accounts. So you had a jump up in 73 accounts, which is a good news story as well. The next one is business license and net profit. It's budgeted $2.5 million. Prior year was 2.1. And in terms of number of accounts, right now we're holding at 2,462 versus prior year 2,401. So again, you got a few more accounts and thoughts. But I thought that was worth noting.
Yeah.
I don't think the legal guy thinks it. He's just sitting there.
I think it's great, Mr. Grubb. Wonderful.
I think it's great. Any increase is great.
Yeah.
So the license and net profit is the 48% of the budget, right? So
Say it again, sir?
The licenses includes net profit.
Yes, it does.
So that's at 48%. I'm just looking back at last year too versus 43. I just like to look at the progression of the revenue streams.
Sure, no, that's what we monitor too. We normally like to see positive trends. And we seem to be positive trends. The next one is the OLF, occupational license fee, or more commonly referred to as the payroll tax. It's budgeted 13.1, prior year was 11.8. It's a delta of 1.3 million. We are most definitely seeing some growth in that, without naming a name, but it's in the east part of town that we're seeing this in. If you look at 22 to 23, we saw a great deal of growth, about 1.9. Right now, we're sitting at 1.3. So it's a slight decrease in the speed of the growth, but we are still seeing growth, and it's strong.
Yeah.
And it could be on that, we
Yeah.
can certainly
Yeah,
budget
like it.
those in COVID times too, so. Or we could have a low standard deviation when we were modeling this for revenue, so.
Do we,
But it,
I'm sure it's in there, that the performance of last year versus our budgeted number on, I'm thinking more of net profit or new business, or, business license. Basically, just looking at that revenue from businesses for what we budget, because it's always hard to foresee that number. Do we track our accuracy on that? From what we budget versus what our actual is?
Yeah, we do. That's one reason I know it's not popular, but I really like doing the budget kind of towards the end of the year, because the more data that we have, obviously the more accurate we can predict some of these numbers. So, I mean, if we're forced or have to do these budget things, we always end up with we'll put a cushion in. So, but we're pretty comfortable. The revenues are more than conservative. So, I mean, that's it, kind of golden rule when you're doing budget. You don't want to overestimate, come up short, then you are in trouble. So-
That's
Well, that
right.
ended
Yeah.
up helping us a lot in 2020,
Yeah.
2021, for sure.
Yes, sir. And certainly, last but not least, is garbage surcharges, or service charges, garbage service charges, sorry. Fiscal year '24 is 2.46 million. Prior year was 2.39 million. So again, we have a little bit of growth. So in those 5 accounts, I thought those were some good news stories there.
Yeah.
If you'll turn over to page 6, I'll highlight a few of the general fund talking points that we have. As we sit here right now, we're looking at a unrestricted fund balance of 12.1 million. The general fund has debt of 12.2 million, with annual debt service payments of 1.7 million. Salary and benefits is 21.9 or 65.9% of the general fund budget. Operating expenditures are 6.9 or 20.7. Capital outlay is 11.1 million. Again, you might have recalled that number being me talking about it earlier, but we'll unfold this. That is in capital purchase improvement fund, Fund 603, and it's at the back of the book. But we will go over that. We do have a couple of new jobs that we would like to propose to you all. City engineer at 123, 128, and 3 new school resource police officers at $202,470. And important to point out that the school system, will be funded 95%. That's a much needed thing, in my opinion, in this day and time. I'd also point out that we have a couple old pension funds. This one down at the very bottom, the Police and Fire Pensions Fund. This predates Kentucky retirement. That's going into the Kentucky retirement system, but it is fully funded. I thought that was worth pointing out. And let me just talk just a little bit about fund balance. The gross on the fund balance, where we're setting at, is $14,102,997. And I think the DOC a few years back wanted to legally restrict $2 million for economic development. So that's how we ended up with the 12.1. this budget is using, the general fund budget is bleeding off some of this fund balance at a tune of 1.8. So that gets us down to a 10.2 million unrestricted fund balance. And it certainly has a 90-day coverage. If anybody's wondering, 90 days of that is 7.2 million.
Mr. Grubb, can I ask you a question before we move on? Just because I think I'm confused. Property tax rate modification, 4%. Is that taking it to 4% or adding 4%?
What that
what's that
is,
mean?
it's 4%. You can legally, by KRS, you can do 4% on the revenue. So it's not the tax rate is not going up.
Okay,
So again, you can do 4% maximum without subjecting it to a vote over the prior year on real revenue. That
Okay.
takes away the tangible.
Is
so
that
it
the
does not
comp-
raise the tax rate. Is that this compensating rate, right?
Is it the compensating rate?
Well, it
No.
could be. It's according to where your assessments are. If your assessments go
I
up
see.
or whatever,
Okay.
That's the ad
the
valorem.
compensation rate compensates for the movement in the total assessment. So you have to calculate a compensating tax rate to
I
bring
see.
in the same amount of revenue as the previous year. And then you can apply that and then you come up with a percent. So for example, if the tax base increased some, and these numbers is from the previous year, but if the assessment base went up, your compensating tax will go down.
Actually go
Yeah.
down, yeah.
So if your property tax or your assessment stayed the same, you could conceivably see a reduction.
Right.
But overall, when you look at it as in totality, it will go up 4% revenue. So, for example, on a $100,000 house, a 4% on average, it may be like $8 or $9
Okay.
or less, if that makes any sense. Each year, I've been doing probably 37 years of budgets and it's always confusing.
It's always very
It
confusing,
is.
and I just
get
didn't
that a
want,
lot,
I was
yeah.
just making sure I knew what I was looking
Yeah.
at.
So if the tax rate, if the tax base goes up, the compensating rate will go down to
Down.
compensate for that increase.
You're right.
And if
Yeah.
it goes down, it will go up to compensate for it, to bring in the same amount of revenue.
But a
That's what you
rate
have to calculate for.
modification, 4% means,
4% in total revenue.
Okay.
In total revenue,
So-
not the tax rate.
okay.
It could be like 60 cents a month even if
It's
it's.
clear as mud.
Yeah, it makes perfect sense, thank you.
Super simple.
Is that what's referred to as that, the ad valorem?
Yeah.
Okay. 'Cause
Yeah.
we have-
And that, I don't know what you say.
Going around your lap.
That's only applicable to real property on the
Yeah.
4%.
Right. What I've seen, how I've seen that handled by politicians is we take credit for it if it goes down.
Right, right.
No, I'm doing.
And it's your
We
fault if it
lower
goes down.
taxes.
You got it.
Yeah, getting back to the fund balance, I guess the only reason I brought that up is, do we have any intentions on the 2 million, or do we still want to keep that restricted?
I believe
I
it's
think-
the board's intent to keep it.
Yes, sir.
Yep.
Yes.
Yes, sir. If you turn to page 7, I've just got some things highlighted here. Transfers to other funds, I think we talked about that. Commissioner Bland, that's what, when we're talking about net of transfers, it's a transfer to the recreation fund of 1.6 million, and a transfer to the bus system of 542,000. Next thing I have highlighted is dues and fees, 509,000 or 1.5% of the general fund budget. Just got a few things highlighted that when we were reviewing these, Summer Mesa was requesting 45,000. Prior years was 30. I think for the last 5 years, I'm just going to point that out. And this is a great program, I think, the Utility Billing Assistance Program. This will help people with their utility bills here at the city. It'll be run by an agency. I'm assuming we'll have to have some kind of sub-recipient agreement. But that will be funded by the interest income on the ARPA. That is not restricted, so I thought that was a great program. and,
Do we budget interest income? So like if we know we have these buckets of money out there, like for coming up, then that's significant money. It was a great thing.
Yeah, I thought so.
But obviously, that's something we should look at, we're gonna get that probably again, right? I mean, that's gonna be interest
Oh, yeah.
income, so.
Not only do we monitor, we monitor about quarterly to try to maximize the best rate. I mean, we certainly make the banks compete.
Yeah, we refinanced just half the money and got 375,000 additional for it. And that's what these are being funded with.
And we also have a Highlands Central Park exhibit at 100K. And I'll also mention, I know people will be on top of this, but that utility billing assistance, I think we need to.
So the Highlands Central Park exhibit, is that for the building?
Yeah.
It's for the Highlands Museum, correct?
Yes.
That's for the
It's not for
Discovery
Central
Center.
Park?
No,
Okay.
it's a display in the Discovery
Okay.
Center.
And we're giving Summer Motion $10,000 more than last year?
15
15.
is their proposal. Whatever, it'll still be on the agenda to go in front of you all. If you all want to change it any, we'll just put it down in contingency.
Hopefully, we can do that before the Saturday before summer motion. That would be great.
Oh, yes, because it was a challenge to find 2 signatures on a check.
Yeah.
Because they were both gone.
Yeah.
I just want to comment, I've talked to some leadership in Summer Motion, and Todd, you can also probably test this. We've seen a significant increase in cost of fireworks just in a couple of years. So, it's a great event for our city, and I think we obviously need to adjust. I think we need to adjust with inflation and provide them with the same financial support or better than we have in the past, so that we can ensure the continued success of this program.
But it was 30 before, and now we're giving them 45,
That's
15,000.
the proposal.
That was a request
I was
from
just
them.
pointing that out because that was above our norm that we've done in the past.
Yeah.
I know it's been a.
Have we
issue
requested to
or-
look at any financials on any of this stuff?
I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, I'm having an allergy attack over here. Have we requested to look at any financials on these things that are asking for the money? Do we look, like,
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay.
I mean, I might be odd man out on this. I've went back and forth. I mean, a lot of times what will happen, like in years past, I mean, we'll literally get like a sheet of paper that had a revenue 10,000, expenses 10,000, then
yeah,
try to track these things down, then the vendor had, it ended up, we would literally have more time, labor costs redoing these things. And I've evolved in that. I think we're gonna give it to them, we just give it to them.
I wonder if, I remember the tri-state
They
airport.
maybe signed something that it was certified, it was used on whatever, I mean.
I think that last year was they were trying to get new routes for the airport, because remember that we had some for them for those. I refuse to fly now, so I don't know what their status is, but, no, I'm good on
Okay. The next, I just got a few more paving, budgeted at $1,375,000. And sidewalks at $775K. And demolition, $500,000, continue to rid the city of life, homes that need to be torn down and stuff. And beautification, $50,000. This was a DOC goal in prior year.
yeah.
I actually inserted that, continued with flowers and landscaping.
I'm glad we
And,
do that.
I'm sorry.
I'm glad we
I
do
know,
that.
yeah.
yeah, I think it looks great. I mean, it really
It
keeps the
does.
city up. Yeah, for sure. So we're going to change it up a little bit. I'm going to let Robin Rowe Howard, she's part of team finance, and she begged me to come up here because she wanted to present some budgets.
Been in the bullpen for years.
Present a few of them, so.
Okay, we have the
Take it off, go for it.
Tax Increment Finance Fund. This is for the redevelopment and improvement of projects in the downtown business district. Fiscal year '24 budget is $143,590, with expenditures for $300,675, and the expenditures for the debt service payment. The fund balance in that account is negative $1 million. The debt service for that account is $3.6 million, with debt service annual payments of $300,375. The revenues are insufficient to cover the expenditures in this account this year, which leaves a deficit of $157,085. And currently, the TIF fund liability to the general fund is $1.2 million.
He started you out on a negative one, didn't he?
Yeah, the bad one.
So that
Negative,
revenue,
that caused a lot of positives, so.
but that
Yes,
budgeted
it did.
amount grew by about 50 grand from this year, from last year.
I think it grew a little bit more than that, didn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I can't do
I think it's
exact math, but-
DISCO and AEP.
Ah.
So.
Is it fair to project that to that growth from last year to this year forward?
What do you mean, is it
What do you
fair?
mean? Yeah.
Like we grew 50, whatever it was.
Well,
To say-
I guess it's the optics that you give you. I mean, DISCO was already here, so we're losing it outside.
The TIF area.
Yeah, and then it went inside the TIF area. I
A
mean,
bigger,
that's good.
much grander.
And then AEP, maybe, was there some people working maybe during COVID and stuff like that?
We were not in our building from March of 2020 to
That
November of
makes sense.
21.
So they're back to full staff.
So everybody's back in the building
Yeah,
finally.
Yeah, that's it.
I have a question. Has the TIF district been reassessed by the PBA? Have they done new assessments? Has the PBA done new assessments?
Yeah, it certainly has over the last few years.
They have on the hotel.
But I just think about some,
I don't
you
know
think
about
about E.B. Jevons or your Clark's
Sure.
building now, has that been reassessed? Like, I think there's some assessment there that maybe we're not.
I can't answer
Capturing.
on that building, but I do know that they've done the hotel and the property with it. I can look at that for you.
Michelle, what was the adjustment on the hotel? Do you remember off the top of your head?
I think up to 13 million,
From,
9.
I just want to make sure
I
that,
would
and I
say-
don't know that that's even our responsibility, but just to
Well,
make sure that
it's
PBA
not.
is staying on top
Yeah,
of.
It's not, but the PBA, I think every few years they got quadrants of the county
Yeah,
that they're supposed to
they do.
reassess, and I'm not sure what schedule that it's on.
I don't know, I just think for the purpose of the district, it should be assessed every year.
Well,
I don't
maybe
know
that's
how we
something
go.
That makes sense,
consistent.
really.
Make a note on that, and we'll see if we can.
I can call them especially about the EV's building, because in any other building that's had significant.
Yeah, I the
improvements.
TIF district should be assessed each year.
Especially if the rate is
because-
growing and-
Because the rate at which
We're
that
growing,
district
yeah.
is growing, we can't sit on it for a year,
To
waiting for them
yeah.
to, or 2 years to reassess.
Good idea.
Yeah.
And like I said, I don't know if we can affect how the PBA does their schedule or not, but
Yeah.
But
I think
also,
it's something to
I
at
want to
least
make it
ask.
clear that we don't want to just target any specific business here. We
Correct.
we-
Thank you, sir.
No.
We'll just check in to see what their schedule is and see
Yeah.
if that's an
We need to
option.
make sure it's a fair and equitable review.
Usually they, like, anything that they had a building permit or anything on, they knew to look at.
Mhm.
So with probably the building permits that they had on his building, I'm sure it was improved. I think that's how they know how to
Yeah.
do some of the
Mhm.
commercial
Yeah.
ones.
And in all frankness, honestly, some of these are, well, even across the city or the county, I mean, from my viewpoint, in my opinion, they're all a little bit low. I mean, that being an elected office, there's pressure to keep these things low.
I think to Commissioner Clark's point, it's important that we look at every opportunity to remedy that balance, but we also don't want to stifle future economic growth by.
I made a note of this.
Right, by overburdening the assessment there. No, I get that, it's a very fine
I'll make a
line.
note of it.
I just want to make sure it's it's on a schedule that's not like every 5 years to be assessed.
Yeah.
That's,
Yeah, I got you.
Especially next year.
yeah,
I mean, that's going to be dramatic.
yeah.
We can certainly check in, so we'll shoot some back. We'll find it.
Okay, we'll move forward to the Municipal Aid Road Fund. This is an excise tax on motor fuel collected by the state and allocated to the city based on population and miles of paved road. This is a special revenue fund and can only be used for street paving and sidewalks. Fiscal year '24 budget of revenues is $457,000. Expenses are the same. Fund balance is $30,372. There's no debt and salaries in this account. And we'll move on to the Community Development Block Grant Fund. This fund accounts for the Community Development Block Grant, which is received each year from the Department of Housing and Urban Development. Grant money can only be used towards approved projects that principally benefit personnel of low and moderate income. There's a certain criteria that they need to meet. Fiscal year '24 budget is $1.6 million. Expenses are the same. The fund balance is $65,000. Salaries and benefits, personnel is $154,000. Operating expenses, $28,000. CDB projects of $1.4 million. And if you turn to the next page, you'll see some of the projects. And some of the good ones are like the homeowner rehab project for home repairs for low to moderate income and elderly homeowners at $50,000. King's Daughters and Son Nursing Home paving their lot and installing new fence for $35,000. The Senior Center window replacement for $75,000. Minority business loans for assistance with women and minorities of $200,000. Clearance for removal to eliminate slum and blight throughout the city of $100,000. The neighborhood to replace 5 air conditioners, $150,000. Salvation Army fencing, flooring, painting, and remodeling of $417,000. And on this fund, they need to execute spending because the general rule allowed is you're allowed to carry over 1.5 times your annual allotment, and we are currently at 3 times of that. The next fund is the ARPA fund for the American Rescue Plan Act. These funds are dedicated solely to the utility fund infrastructure. Fiscal year '24 budget is $13 million, and the project outlays are $13 million. If you go to the next page, you'll see a list of the projects. Some of them I'll point out is tank rehab for 55th Street, $1.1 million. To install generators at the pump station, $975,000.
And the power company employee thanks you.
Tank rehab at 13th Street, $1.5 million. Tank rehab at High Knob, $1.1 million. Tank rehab at Logtown, $1 million. Lining projects, $2 million. Let me look at the rest of it.
Before we go on from there,
We
and
talked
if
about the mechanical bar
Oh,
street
yeah.
piece at $1 million. I think
it's at the risk of sounding pandering, I just want to thank the elected officials because, again, there's other communities that didn't make this decision as early as we did. And Tony and Michelle are wringing their hands at times about the execution on this, but the work that Steve and the engineering department have done have really put us in a great position. So, I mean, we've talked about the market and the ability to get goods. You know, we've talked about that with the wastewater treatment plant that we're going to have to buy ahead of what a normal procurement is. So I just really appreciate you all making that decision so early on. I saw a lot of my peers kind of spinning on what they were going to do with it, and we were moving out. So the work between Steve, Mark, Tony, and Michelle has really put us in a great position. We'd all wanted those generators a couple years ago. It's just a process. As we know with federal funds, if we don't do it right, we get slapped around, and we don't want to do that. So just proud of the staff, and thank you all for keeping the focus on the utilities.
And I also want to comment, we're not just looking at this now, but each of our commission rotates on the capital projects committee so that we're actively engaged in not just the initial process here of approving the budget, but engaged with staff throughout the year so that we're kept up to speed on where things are and where we're going. So I appreciate my board for doing all they can to participate. I know it's above and beyond our meetings, but regular meetings, but it's important that we are kept up to date on this stuff.
That's how I knew what that mechanical bar string was for $1 million.
Yeah.
But hopefully we'll get to knock some of these out this year. It'd be wonderful to see some of these come to fruition.
Well, and the other commitment on the engineering assistant, I mean, that
Yes.
is just huge. Again, 11 in the bond, 14 in the ARPA, 57 for the wastewater treatment plant. You're pushing on the door of $100 million, and, I'd order Steve to go home last night. So there's a lot of work to do.
Did
So.
Steve's wife order him back?
No, I began my work on my wife as soon as I got home. Trying to balance that as best as possible.
And in all seriousness, I did make a joke about the generators, but if we learned anything during the ice storm, it was we needed those, and they're important,
Yeah.
and I'm thrilled to see them.
I wish I had one.
I think
We got one during the ice storm.
Steve was walking out when finance was walking back in, if I recall correctly, so.
Called our night shift.
Okay, we'll continue on with the Conference Center Grant Fund. This is the AMLR grant, which is an abandoned mine land economic revitalization grant the city received for doing engineering and design for the conference center. It's budgeted at $1 million. And then the next fund is the opioid settlement fund. There was a class action lawsuit in the city's received fund to help combat opioid dependency. The budget this year is $400,000. The fund balance is, we're projecting at $400,000 because this is a new fund. It is under budgeted. We are using fiscal year '23 projected revenue while waiting on information from outside legal counsel as to what funds we'll get for fiscal year '24. There's no salary or debt associated with this account. There are restrictions on how funds can be used. Some of the ways are to provide education on opioids, drug take-back and disposals, and detox services.
And just a note, I think you all were tracking, but we reopened the window. Susan, when does it close?
The 31st.
31st. So, to be frank, we hadn't got to an analysis of the ones that have been submitted. Somebody in the community had said, hey, I didn't know about it. I think, Erica, we ended up putting it on Facebook this time. So we should have a wider swath of recommendations, and then we'll go through a formalized process and make a recommendation to the board.
Michelle, would you take over from here?
We're going to start with the city's Section 8 voucher programs. The city received Section 8 voucher funding from the Department of Housing and Urban Development. We actually provide these funds for the Section 8 housing for the entire Boyd County. We currently have 513 families that we serve. The revenue that we are getting this year is $3.8 million. The expenditures to administer and pay the HAPs and utility assistance to the tenants that we have on our program is $3.9 million. There's a fund balance for fiscal year '22 of $85,877. There's no debt. Salary and benefits are $388,000 or 9.9%. Operating expenditures are $108,390. The housing assistance payments that we actually get is $3,312,696. We also have a veterans program. The veterans program serves up to 15 families. We received $121,668 from HUD to serve veterans. Capital outlay is zero. The 513 families, the average cost is $532 per unit. Administrative fees is fees that we earn per unit. So HUD pays us, it's more than $63, but they only fund like 89% of what is in the Federal Register. So mathematically, it comes out, we get $63.95 per unit that we serve. Revenue is insufficient to meet expenses. There's a deficit of $127,052. That deficit is actually added. Currently, I think they owe the general fund around $300,000. So that would be in addition to the $300,000 that we already owe the general fund, because we're having the same problem this year with administrative revenue we're earning exceeds administrative fees that we're getting in.
I have a question, and this may sound like an absolutely stupid question, and I apologize if it is, but we administer this for the entire county.
Yes.
Correct? That's what I thought I heard you say.
Mhm.
Do we get any assistance from the county to administer any of this?
No, HUD has a Federal Register they put out, and the Federal Register tells in every metropolitan statistical area what they think that it should take to administer a unit, and we get paid per unit. So if we have 500 units, we get the $63.95 per unit to administer it. So it's a federal program, and we are an entitlement community, so it comes to us, nothing to the county.
Okay.
I think the fundamental thing that we need to discuss on this, though, is, I'm sorry, Michelle, do you have anything else to add?
No.
Okay.
And they have increased the units. They are serving more than they did last year.
But the way I understand this is if you look at the bottom line, $127,000 of this year's budget that is funded out of the general fund, that doesn't come to us from the feds to serve our customers. So an argument can be made that it should be self-sufficient. It should just be handled with HUD funds. Or and I say you all are okay with subsidizing this to a certain degree. And it's a pretty simple formula. If we say that's, and I can't speak for Mr. Pullum, but if we were to run this at self-sufficient, then you're probably reducing a position that we've already approved for authorizations. But Michelle, you said it's built from last year. It's a total of 300?
Currently, right now, they owe the general fund over $300,000.
So it's just something that you all need to be aware of. We continue to fund this.
I think we should.
But are you saying the position that we have is causing that?
Manpower is the biggest part of the cost. Chris and finance, I don't want to speak for either one of you, but I think.
It's $127,000. Is somebody making $127,000 including
No,
benefits?
what happened is the previous position actually, it's always done 2 jobs until we hired this Tracy, and she's doing it full-time. And the receptionist was always done with manpower help because there was never enough money to afford to hire someone full-time, which we had. So we added position and we added full-time. Used to, the person, even going back 20 years, did 2 jobs. They did CDBG and they did voucher, or they did voucher and the bus system together. Until Tracy was hired, it was never a full-time position. The person managed 2 programs.
I guess my thought is, I understand that we have to be financially responsible as much as we can, but this is a hugely important program here. So, and looking at the budgeted amount and obviously expenses and all that go into it, but if we went from 511 families to 513 families this year. So I guess my my thinking is, understand we need to be smart about the expenditures of it, make sure that, but this isn't a profit type deal, right? If it would break even, that would be great, but, you know.
Yeah, I don't think
Yeah,
it's a
because we're
matter.
just a pass-through.
Right, but what I
Yeah.
really want.
I don't
is-
think it's a matter of breaking even. I
Right.
think, I'm fine with subsidizing it from the general fund. I think we should.
What's Mr. Pullum have to say? You want to say anything?
It's been a tough 18 months for Section 8. We had a complete turnover in staff, of veteran staff that were well-trained and had a great relationship with our finance department, who, you know, they were synced up, and anytime they needed help, you could hold Gretchen or Jacob and could get the help they need. And then we had a turnover. The first one we hired ended up not working out, and we had to dismiss her. Just so you know, to train someone to be a housing specialist is not a 30-day job. It's
I could get
an
that.
8-month to a year position, training schedule to get them to where they're confident enough to be able to handle their workload themselves. So when you invest a year in someone, and then, well, not quite a year, but when you invest that much time in someone, they don't work out, you're behind even more. So we've had to play catch up right now. We have a great staff. Tracy has done a terrific job. She's discovered things from our audit in her research that go back, dating back to 2015, that were issues that we are working on correcting now. Or actually, we already have corrected them all according to our response to the audit. So we've got a great staff. DJ, his job as our administrative assistant, he triages everyone that comes in. So when a client comes in and they've got their certification papers, I can guarantee you they're not going to be complete. So they'll come back 2 or 3 times to get their complete file before they go see a housing specialist. Before we have the administrative assistant, they would go straight back and talk to the housing specialist, who there's 513 vouchers we're dealing with here. They would go straight back and talk to the housing specialist. They won't have their complete documentation, but they'll take up 20 minutes talking to the housing specialist. So they were always behind and could never catch up with their work. So now DJ's position, the administrative position, will triage every client that we have come in. He can answer level 1 and 2 questions as they come in. And then when he presents the case to the housing specialist, they're ready to go through the certification process. So it's a streamlined process, very efficient the way we have it going now. And I really don't know if we could manage, and we have ran up with seasonals in the past, run into the same problem. By the time we get them trained to be able to answer the level 1 and 2 questions, they have to cycle out, or we have to put them on payroll and provide benefits. So we're required to get rid of them and bring on another seasonal. And we have to go through the same process to get them trained up to do the job. So when the commission took action to add this position, it was encouraging. My staff appreciated it, and I appreciate your support. So thank
So
you.
do you think there'll be a time when it'll be a break even?
We're
No.
fighting
Or
for
it's
more.
always going to have this?
We're fighting for more admin money all the time.
Yeah.
In fact, what's not accounted for in this budget is the $32,168 that we're getting from HUD, which was documented. We sent that to finance, that they sent us a letter that we're getting in October from HUD to support our administrative fees.
But I think it boils down to, if all things stay steady state, we're talking on average then, is it going to be 120 a year to maintain the?
It's going to go up because as his salaries go up, it's going to continue to go up. Right now, with this year, you're all at $500,000 out of the general fund to support the program. So the next year it'll be,
And our administrative
Well,
fees will go up too.
Yeah, I think one thing.
and the administrative fees are
important to
set
remember
by the Fed.
about the federal government is they're never going to fund you for exactly what it is that you have to pay out.
Well, I just want
An
to
extra
feel
32
good about what I know, about what's going on. You know.
And I think it boils down to,
One
is
thing
the
to do.
general fund going to continue to subsidize? And then what can we accurately predict on what that's going to be?
Yeah.
And that, and I'm not asking for this today, but is there a tipping point where you say, well, that's too much? And that's just the discussion we wanted to have today, so that you all are aware of this, that we are funding it, and it will sustain if we maintain the positions as they are.
That was kind of where I was going with my question about, are we placing people in housing all over the county?
Absolutely, yes. And we're
Yeah.
expecting.
So
all
if
the
our
benefits.
general fund is supporting the administration of this
Are we not
program,
getting
are we
it?
asking the county to also help us support their citizens?
We
Are these
have-
only, I get,
That's a good.
if somebody who lives,
That's
somebody who lives in the
yeah,
county
yeah.
comes in here, gets a voucher and gets placed either in the city or in the county.
Right.
we're
The
paying for that
request would be-
our general fund is supporting that. Is there, should we reach out to the county and ask if their general fund can support it in some way?
We can make a parallel with animal control.
It's their residents too.
Yes, you're exactly right. Yeah.
I mean, I'm not sure why,
That's a very compelling case.
Yeah.
why we shoulder that entire
Oh,
burden
yeah.
if we're doing it for the whole county.
No, we're not in the mood to do away with something like
No,
this at
no.
all, but I think that's right. They should pay their part in helping them.
Well,
If
I'm-
you'd like, City Manager, we could prepare a request for a meeting with the county judge to discuss.
I think what I'd like to recommend is that, for the sake of the budget, I think what I'm interpreting is the support of it this year. And then I think the analysis, Chris, would be important with saying, hey, simply what percentage is going there? I think that's the
Yeah.
start of the conversation with the
Yeah, we
county.
can do
You know, if they do 10%, well, 10% of something, right?
Yeah, I
And,
mean,
you know, like, horrible to equate people to animals, but same sort of concept. We jointly work in animal control, so.
We have no business by KRS to be in the animal control business, but it's in the city's best interest. I think it helps the county, so that's the parallel I was trying to make, and
Yeah.
I think it's a good
I'm not
good
saying
discussion.
you were
to have.
being horrible. I'm saying
I'm
me
hor- no, I'm
comparing the two.
I think that's a great idea because I'm hearing now 300,000, and I understand why this is happening, but we can't, we should try to look at some sort of, I think it's a good idea to meet with them.
Sure, we can set
Yeah.
that up. Thank you.
Because we want to do our part too, but, you know,
Well,
it might get to the point where it's way out of whack.
At what point is it unsustainable?
Yeah.
I think.
And we know we don't want to not do it.
That's
The only
right.
thing I'm going to recommend too is that we look at how this is trended, how the expenses have trended, and also so that we can better understand as a board, you know, why it's here now and it wasn't here then. And secondly, if we're going to ask the county, I would also be intrigued to know what percentage of the county versus city residents are receiving services.
Yeah.
No, that was my
Probably have that, don't
point.
you?
Yeah.
I
We
mean,
can
I
get
think
it
they have that
yeah.
information.
That's what I'm saying, if they do 10%, I'm just fictitious, if it's 10%, then it's logical they would consider paying 10% of something.
But yeah, let's also look at trending over time and better understanding what the cost and the reason for the increased costs are.
And I'm sure we have this, I know we say here that the feds do $63.95 per unit per month. What is our cost per unit per month? Do we know that? Or can we figure that out?
I could calculate
Yeah,
it for you.
and that, then, that's the nexus then.
Yeah.
Is
Yeah.
we need X dollars per unit.
We can get that to you.
I'm sorry to take it to like the nth
Oh,
degree,
no, that
but
makes sense.
how my
Yeah,
mind
degree
works.
matters.
This is all extremely important because we're just trying to figure out how to maintain and keep this fund, keep this,
yes.
Keep this
responsible.
From accelerating it.
But there's a much bigger issue here. We know all of that housing is maxed out.
Right.
And you can't really, not that this is for the city to do, but for the community as a whole to look at trying to increase options for low-income housing. It's hard to get to that point when we're trying to responsibly manage this.
Or any kind of housing. I mean, there's a shortage of every kind of housing.
Yes.
Yes.
And ironically, Commissioner Clark and I had a conversation about this yesterday, so.
We're spending $956 per unit to administer it.
$956.
$6, yes.
And we get we get $63 of that back?
We get,
Or is that $965 a year?
yeah, HUD gives you $768 per
Okay.
unit. We're spending $965 per unit.
Okay.
They give us what per unit? $760?
$768 per unit. There's about 43 units a month that have to be worked on with the two specialists. So that has to be redone. It's an average of 43, and they give you $768 per unit.
And when you're saying 956, that includes all the employees and everything in the
That's what-
cost of that?
that's what our
Administration, okay.
Yes. HUD gives you $768, we're spending $965.
Okay, we're spending $965. Okay.
Let's move on to
Okay.
floodwater. The flood wall operating fund is a tax that accounts for the maintenance of Ashland flood wall. The property tax is assessed on property in the district. The flood wall maintains 6 pump stations, 23 pumps, and approximately 14,000 feet of concrete wall and 800 feet of earth and levee. The expense, the revenue is $332,606. The flood wall does have a fund balance of $168,674. We're using $36,000 of the fund balance, but we are purchasing a pickup truck, which is something we probably do every 10, 12 years. So we are using that out of our fund balance. The expenses in the flood wall is $332,606. $190,351, or 66.2%, is salary and benefits. Operating expenditures are $97,255, and capital outlay for the truck is $45,000. The flood wall assessment on property of $242,367,405, and the tax rate last year was .1056 per $100 evaluation. Any questions?
I just want to make one comment. I've said this the last 3 years in a row. Jack, where the flood wall team has come from 5 or 6 years ago, is astronomical. We're in great standing with the Corps of Engineers in the annual inspection. I think they're being more proactive on maintenance than they were prior. So that's not an area I stay awake at night about that I did when I first got here. So great work to the guys that have rotated through there too, because we've changed some personnel over the last couple of years. So great job.
The next fund is the utility fund. The utility fund has a proposed budget of $26,529,869. Charges for services, which is our water, sewer charges, are $20,213,915. This budget does include the rate modifications that was done, that was phased in over three times in 2 fiscal years, which the rate modifications in this fiscal year equals $2 million. But on a minimum bill, it was like $2 is what the minimum bill went up to generate $2 million. The utility director budget is $208,512. Utility cashier is $1.3 million. Utility administration is $5.5 million. That's where your insurances, your administration for city staff, your utility pension payments are made. That's why that one is so high.
Okay.
We have water production at $3.1 million. That's the cost to salaries, benefits. The reason that has went up in the past years, we've had a 30% increase in some chemicals.
Yeah.
And electric costs have also went up, so with the water plant. Water distribution is $5.2 million. Water capital is $4.2 million. Wastewater, which will unfold later in the next couple of pages. Wastewater treatment is $2.5 million. Wastewater collection is $2.3, and wastewater capital is $1.8. If you want to go to page 19.
If I can make one comment on the personnel and the impact of Baker Tilly. It'll be interesting to see over the next 6-7 months how things stabilize with the workforce down there, specifically the water treatment plant. So Mark and Bill are keeping an eye on that, but can we attract
Stabilize in terms of
personnel
not leaving,
and
people
personnel.
not leaving, yeah.
So we were optimistic for a return of some previous employees that didn't pan out, that were certified at level 4, table 4. That didn't work out, but it's just something that caused an effect of the Baker Tilly, that this was one of the areas we're most optimistic for. So we'll see what happens.
And I think because we actually, we adjust the water production. I know that Russell and Greenup also raised their salaries to retain their water treatment operators also. So it is a very market driven
Yeah,
job for
good.
them right now.
Can we take a 10-minute break? I need to
Thank you.
get some water. I'm having allergy issues.
Yes, ma'am, last comment, KLC, just thought about this, Mark. KLC is actually having a meeting here in the next couple weeks on the turnover of personnel and utilities.
Good.
So, I know you all have heard us say that when we go up to Frankfurt, we talk about maybe some other stipends that could come from the state to help supplement. So at least KLC is taking the lead on this, so 10 minutes, ma'am?
10 minutes. Lunch is at 11:30.
Well,
Is it?
10 minutes.
Oh, okay.
Well,
All right, we'll just wait
let's
till
just-
11:30.
Lunch is at
Just
10
wait.
minutes.
We continue?
Yeah.
Okay.
Whatever. If you're calling, I don't care.
Well, you all were.
On page 19,
10 minutes.
I can hold it.
Hit the gas.
I'll sit here.
we have an unlimited fund balance of
if you need to.
1.8 million or 39 days of operating expenses. So our rate modifications will help build that back up where it should be.
What's the recommended?
90 days.
90 days.
90 days. Debt of the fund is 17.7 million. Debt service payments are 2.3 million, or 8.8% of the utility fund. 2013 revenue bonds, here's a good news story there. This is the last year of payment on those. Those will be totally paid off. That'll give us another $521,000 when that is paid off. The 2015 water and sewer bond, $2,292,000 debt service payment. As Tony said earlier, the radio read meters, that will also be paid off, and we'll save $130,000 on that. The KIA loan for the water plant, that when we redid the water plant in 2004, that debt service will actually be paid off next year. So we will be down to the two debt services that we did, and then any on the sewer plant. So there's about $1 million worth of debt service money that's going to be freed up before we have to make the KIA loan payment for the sewer plant.
Yeah.
That's a great,
So-
I mean, there's been days I haven't heard any kind of news like that, but this really makes me smile.
So that's another $1 million that will help, produce that. Unfunded utility pension liability is $6.2 million. We still have some work to do in the utility fund. We have taken care of the one in the general fund, but $471,485, there's about 26 active members still on that plan. Salary and benefits, $9.9 million. This has went up last year because a lot of the market adjustments were made in the utility, not only for the water plant, for our distribution workers and our maintenance workers, to bring them up to what market level pay. Operating expenses, $7.5 million. Some of the big increases of that is the cost of pipe, the cost of chemicals, the cost of electricity has increased that over prior years. Capital outlay, you all are still making a tremendous investment in the infrastructure of our utility system. An interesting thing, in addition to the ARPA money of $13 million, you're doing $6.2 million out of the utility fund revenues. So you're putting in about $20 million in infrastructure next year. That's something we should be very proud of.
Yeah, yes, it is.
So, Kentucky and ICMA retirement is $1.4 million. It's up $75,000, but I think that's due to the addition of jobs, and the Kentucky retirement is on the additional salaries where we made the big strides on bringing our workers up to the market pay. There's a new position here. The city engineer will be funded 50% here. The utility rate modification, as we spoke, is going to be phased in over 2 fiscal years. Utility unclassified capital projects, $225,000. This was budgeted in prior years, but this kind of got put on the back burner when we lost the engineer. We're going to work on the city building HVAC and some new windows to do some more energy efficiency here. And an interesting statistic, our water plant produced 3.7 billion gallons of water last year. Our wastewater treatment plant treated 1.8 billion gallons. And our distribution department, 169 main breaks and service leaks repaired.
Is that down?
Michelle, well, I was gonna,
That's gotta be down.
It feels like it's
Yeah.
way down.
Sure.
Well,
I was just thinking that.
it's ironic, Mark and I talked about this yesterday. Statistically, we're still at a high break rate. We're still in the 80s. I didn't see this in
But
here.
it's down from our history,
Yes.
right?
Yeah, previous
Yes.
experience,
Okay,
yeah.
okay.
They've
Good
made-
work.
They've made strides on that, and they actually have.
Is that yea or
It's
no?
not.
No,
No,
it's not?
no, it's still in the 80s. The impact of what the breaks are is much lower.
I think she's saying in her term as commissioner, that keeps
Didn't we
going
used to
down.
have like 300 breaks a
Yes,
year?
absolutely.
Yeah, it seems like
She's
it.
not saying it should be, it's not what it is. She's saying that they've made strides to bring it down from
Yes.
what it was.
We're making strides to bring it down. We're still at over 80 breaks per 100 miles per year.
Gotcha.
Yes.
Is what I'm
But
saying.
it's
Yeah,
better
but
than it
it's-
was.
We have significantly reduced
It
from,
seems like, yeah.
Yes.
Um,
used to be
Every
like
day.
300 or something.
The water capital, we're
Are
gonna.
we still investing $1 million and per year for water line
Yes,
replacement?
yes,
Okay.
yes,
Yeah.
yes.
Because I want to tie back to what you said before, Michelle. We'll have some good decisions hopefully next year with all the work that's been done on reducing debt. Maybe we can add more to that. But this is a decision for next year.
You know, and it's something that, you know, Mark and Shane is also doing, is they have invested some money in this year into finding some of the water loss and water leaks, so actually bringing it down also. Extension of the loading dock for $40,000. We're gonna repair and replace the 42-inch intake line into the water treatment plant for $200,000. The contact basin cover, after we did some engineering on it, the price has went up on it, $750,000. But good news on another story, like for the tank, to aerate the tanks, the board hill, it went down from $1 million, so that money was actually covers the contact basin cover
All right,
increase of
yeah.
$500,000, and it added an additional $400,000 to line. You have $2 million in sewer line now, so
Oh,
it went up, but we have a good news story to pay for it. We're doing some lead service line identification program. We're gonna start it in next year. Mark hopes to find some grant money to help pay for that, but we're gonna invest $450,000 to eliminate lead service lines. I think we have to do that by October 2024.
Mark, I'm sorry. There will be grant money for that, right? I think I remember
There
reading
is.
that there's like lead replacement money.
We've already applied for.
Okay.
some money for that. Five Coast Health.
Good.
So those are all in evaluation right now down in Frankfurt and KLA.
I thought I remembered seeing those. I'm
Struggling with
glad I'm not
personnel
insane.
issues there also with the massive amount of work
It's going to be.
that has been required with
Yeah.
all the added funding. It's difficult to spend money. Unfortunately, there's just a lot of work required to try to spend money, so they're
Yeah.
struggling with those personnel too. So we had hoped we would learn sooner, a little bit sooner than what they project as far as the award of that grant, but we're still optimistic that we'll find out about it by October.
do you estimate we have a lot of lead pipes, or do you know, do we know?
Well, a lot is a relative term.
Okay, well,
By the age-
okay.
For the age of our system.
Exactly what percentage do we have then?
Well, that's what the money's for, is to find out where they are.
Yes.
There
So
are
you
no
don't-
records.
So when you're down there, you
sufficient to
don't
make
see any of
determination.
that
So-
stuff?
So part of the grant will be to utilize
Okay.
technology to identify how much lead we actually do have.
The problem, Commissioner Spriggs, is you're also trying to determine what it is on the customer side.
Exactly.
And that's the real
Biggest concern.
Unknown.
mystery in this whole
I
thing.
think I've got some.
Possible.
Something else that we have budgeted, that we're gonna actually start the valve servicing program again. We have 100,000 budgeted towards that. I think maybe 2 years ago, we worked on some of these old valves that we have. We have 195,000 to a Gutterman leak detection logger. This will help with our water loss, where you're working, Mr. Clark will like this, has always been, we're working to reduce our water loss even more with this expenditure. And water main replacements, and some of this is through the grant funding that we were able to attain through KIA and FIFCO. We have $2,250,000 going towards water main replacement. And I also want to put some kudos into distribution employees, because they are saving us tremendous amount of money. They're out doing them themselves. These smaller lines, our staff are replacing, and they're replacing at a third of the cost to when we have to hire a contractor. So
great.
kudos to our distribution employees for getting these done, and they're starting to knock these off. They got slowed down a little bit by not being able to find pipe, but they've actually started planning 3 and 6 months ahead of time to get the pipe they need for ones they know they're gonna do in a few months, for they'll have it on hand and they can keep the tempo going to get these replaced. And let's go to the next
I
page.
just make a statement about the benefit of this type of investment since really, 2017 or so. That this isn't something where you see step changes, so we're much better. It's a trend. It's gonna be a long-term trend.
Yes, and we have, you all with your commitment of funds, we have our workers doing it and we have contractors doing it simultaneously. And they have actually, we would not have this 4,000 people without water again, because we have redundant lines to get these people water. So they've done an excellent job getting our system.
I remember when there used to be like 1 million gallons in then leakage. Remember when all that was going on?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, and that's part of our goal is we don't know what we don't know.
Yeah.
And this leak detection's gonna help.
Yes, they're working diligently, and they also have equipment to where they can pinpoint where some of these are.
I remember handing out bottled water in the snow.
Yeah.
And remember in August, handing out bottled water.
I remember trying to procure 6,000 cases of water.
In August.
Yes.
Yeah, it was on my birthday. I remember at the park handing out water.
Much better safe.
On wastewater capital highlights, we have a pickup truck of $62,000. We have 3 sewer main replacements, one on 4th Street, 45th Street, and we have Boone Street. And I think those are ones our staff are doing also. Wastewater tries to, any ones that they can do and do safely, and with the amount of staff they have, they do themselves to save us money. And the last one over here is wastewater treatment plant, CSO. We have money towards the engineering of the final design. Any questions? I know I went through the utility fund pretty quick.
Good work.
Yeah.
This might be a good break point.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
We're gonna break at this point for lunch, and we'll reconvene in 30 minutes. We're gonna do lunch, so we'll reconvene in 30. Does that work for everybody?
Yeah.
Everybody.
Bus systems on page 22 to get reorientated with everybody. Ashland Bus System proposed budget for FY 2024 is $2,137,237. It is a balanced budget. The grants that we are receiving from FTA is $1,568,372. The city is making a match of $542,915. This fund accounts for the city's transportation center, which is federally funded by the FTA. The debt is zero. Salary and benefits is $1,285,921. Operating expenses are $551,141. Contingency is $10,175. Capital outlay is $290,000. We have a bus for $140,000. We are finding difficulties in purchasing buses. We had 3 ordered from a year and a half ago and they were canceled.
Oh,
So we cannot find a larger size bus. So we're hoping to start back over again. The average production time for a bus is 4 years now. So,
Well, it's probably a bad time to ask again about expansion of our routes. But I do think with the potential job opportunities in Boyd County, specifically in the campus landing area, I really think we need to look at that.
we have instructed Randy to try to purchase a bus that doesn't maybe hold as many, because that way if we get in a bind with one broken down, we still have one that would seat 15 to 18, depending on how many handicap lifts we have. But we were surprised after a year and a half of them being ordered, they were all canceled.
oh,
So he's trying to get some through, since we're at the tri-state area with Cuyahoga, he's trying to get some through actually West Virginia.
where do we order these buses from?
We actually ordered them through the KPTA contract, Kentucky Public Transit, through the state. And the reason we do that is there's so many regulations to do that, because if not, we would have to fly out to where they're manufactured and we would have to observe how much American steel they have and all, bunch.
Do you think they just had an overwhelming amount of orders?
They are gearing, from what I understand, instead of making buses, making a recreational vehicle for people, because it's on the same type of chassis.
Huh.
We have the paratransit ridership software at $150,000. We actually have been in contact with them this week. We got some good news. The people that we have our software with currently has developed an app in this technology where if you're on a bus stop on your phone, you can see where the bus is.
Oh,
So.
Yeah, so it actually allows real-time tracking. I think you can do push notifications.
That's pretty cool.
We can put information on there, advertise events coming up, flyers and stuff.
Oh,
so
great.
it's kinda cool.
And instead of like trying to get a hold of Tammy to schedule a paratransit appointment, you can actually do it on your phone and it will go into our software and see if one is available. So it's much more convenient for our passengers also. The operating grant that we get from FTA is $440,897. The capital grant is $1,062,109. And the capital grant, the state of Kentucky actually will give us 10% towards anything that we purchase. So with capital that we're purchasing, $1,062,000 will be like $106,000.
yes, nice.
So the ridership is 59,737, and the miles driven last year were 205,757. The next fund is the recreation operating fund. It has a budget of $2,326,969. $490,000 is coming out of its fund balance. We already transferred money over 2 years ago for the Oliverio Park. Because when we applied for the grant, we transferred the match over. And we also, the Lane Conservation Grant is $175,000, and we transferred over the money for the pool improvements. We could not get the deck and the liner done in time enough to open the pool, so we've had to put it off to next fiscal year because of supply chain issues that they had. Salary and benefits are $1,123,884. Operating expenses, $541,585. Capital outlay, $665,000. And if you go on page 24, that we took your instruction, we did not add any projects. We just carry over the projects that we've already had budgeted. We have a pool liner for $120,000, a pool concrete deck for $110,000, Dawson pool filters for $50,000, the Oliverio Park inclusive playground for $350,000, and we have some security cameras for $35,000. Ashland Cemetery Fund. On page 25, this accounts for the city cemetery, which was founded in 1870, an interesting fact. We have a budget proposed of $410,692. There is the unrestricted fund balance over there is $1.8 million. Debt is $0. Salary and benefits are $231,602. Operating expenses, $79,090. And capital outlay is $100,000, which is a fence for the cemetery, and that money was transferred over in the previous year. We did not start the fence with the construction of Belmont with the water lines. So that money is there where we can replace and update that fence.
I'd say that's the nicest bunch of people over there. They're really nice and easy to work with.
Mm-hmm. It's a beautiful cemetery.
It is.
That fence is rough though. You go up Belmont.
It is.
Yeah, it is.
But there is the funds, and I think Sean and Amber have looked into options of updating that. Parking garage is on page 26. It has proposed revenues of $28,655 and expenses of $352,350. It has no fund balance. The debt is $0. Salary and benefits, we have 2 maintenance workers over there, is $119,598. Operating expenses, $82,752. And we have capital outlay of $150,000. Some of this is in progress. We've ordered some stuff with the kiosk and the gates, need replaced. The surveillance camera system, we have $50,000 budgeted. They're looking at different options for it. And other capital improvements, we have a contingency still of $50,000, and all of this is re-budgeted from last year, what we haven't finished.
Do we have people working over there?
We have 2
The 2 that we have, okay.
maintenance workers.
And what are they doing? We don't have any people parking there except the bank, right?
They clean, they cut the grass that's over there. The bathrooms are a challenge, I think, on a daily basis. Anything else to add on that, Jack?
Just that.
So-
What?
So we'll,
What about those light bulbs in there? What's the power bill in there now?
The power bill is about $4,000, $5,000. It's significant.
A
What
month?
kind of lights are in
Yeah.
there?
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say.
I think I was told a lot of them are LED.
In our assessment, security assessment, we went over there at the beginning, they had just changed those to efficient lighting. So,
When was this, Chief?
It was less than 2 years.
Yes.
So that we're using LED lighting and it's still $4,000 a month?
The lights seem to run all day.
Okay.
We've adjusted the time so that barbs are okay.
When did you do that? When?
Here's about a month and a half ago.
Okay.
There was an issue with the time, I believe we had to close some of the times.
Larry said this was about that.
Okay, we need to,
We will monitor and see, what, you know, I'll make Jack aware of the bill, if it, what it goes down to.
I mean, is there such a thing, I mean, is there a motion center light that when the people could go up to a floor, the lights would come on and stay on for a protracted amount of time and then go off? You know what I mean? Is there such a thing
I'm sure there is.
that would,
Sean, did you have something to add?
After that discussion's over.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I think there is, I know that I've walked into buildings when lights turn on.
yeah, I mean, is there any reason for the lights to be on all night?
I don't think they are on all night, are they, Jack, or the full complement?
Well, we was having them shut off when we shut the gates, but since we left the gates open 24/7, and give them access to it, during nighttime hours, we have to have lights on.
And
We'll analyze it.
and I also think if the police are called,
But why do we need the people parking in there at, I don't know, explain to me. Why do people need to park in there at 3 or 4 in the morning?
What if the people who live downtown are parking in there?
Well, I would have a question about that statement, but, you know, I can't know for sure.
Well, but that's why you would need to be parking
I
at 3 or
can't
4 in the
imagine
morning.
anybody parking there when they could park right outside their apartment, whatever. I just don't know why we're keeping it open all night.
we can look at
The
it.
bank sure's
I mean,
have to
there's-
keep it open all night.
There are
Which is
people
the
that have
problem.
monthly rentals, and so having the access 24/7.
The problem, we're looking at having this for events and things like that, and I get that. Well,
it's-
no,
the parking
this
garage is
discussion for
designed
another
to
time.
get people off of the street and into the garage so that people who want to come and use the businesses downtown can use them and find a place to
Well,
park.
I get that, but we also, the parking study also said we had ample parking, if you'll remember. So, yeah.
And every
So-
citizen says we don't, so.
Well, of course, well, and the reson for that is, and you know
They just
why
don't wanna
that
walk.
is.
Yeah, it's-
Yeah,
it's
this
not
is
a parking
another
problem.
conversation for another time, but I think we need to look at reducing that cost.
We'll definitely look at the lights,
Yeah.
and just, I mean, not to, there's a lot more that's going to be done in the next 8 months with the kiosks, et cetera, as we fall into, you know, a normal operating procedure on what percentage of spots are going to be open there, what the hours are going to be, how they access. That's going to change everything with the kiosks. So, but I think your point, Commissioner, on the lights, we'll definitely take a look at
Yeah, I
and
mean,
make
at
sure
a
we're
deficit of
maximizing.
$323,000 is not good.
Pardon?
The deficit for the parking garage every year is not good, okay?
No, it will continue to increase in revenue.
But we need to do things to try to reduce that, so that's the first step. Yeah. Okay.
The next fund is the conference center, and this is different from the Ampler grant because the conference center will actually be an enterprise fund, and we have $1 million a loan from the general fund, because once you all start the architectural work of it, there's more money to go with the grant to start funding it.
Got it.
Okay, great.
Oh, yes, Sean.
That's okay. And this may not be the right time. I was looking at this and, for personnel purposes, is this the right time to discuss any adjustments or
Can
anything
you
like
come up
that?
here
Yeah.
anyway? Everybody's so soft-spoken but me.
I did put in a request for 3 full-time personnel for Parks and Recreation for the department as a whole. I noticed that we did not get that approved. And I just wanted to, I guess, speak my case for the employees, basically. We are actually operating at less strength right now than we did 15 years ago. And I probably don't have to list the amount of facilities we now have not limited to the riverfront, the 106-acre cemetery, and a lot of the other things we got going. We've offset those for a long time with seasonals as we could, but I can tell you from a tipping point, we now have seasonals that have been with us over a year, and we are paying certain benefits on that because we can't get rid of them. And I thought Chris made a great point earlier. We can't afford to not train them at this point. Or to bring somebody else in and have to get rid of them about the time they're up to speed. I only bring this up because this is one of the biggest things the employees have mentioned to me over the last couple of years. I can go on and on. We also do weedy lots now. We're less strength now than we were 15 years ago, full-time strength. We could use the help. This is kind of like my plea, like, hey, we really do need the help. I'd love to tell you that seasonal can do that, but all we're doing is taking full-time positions away from people. And we're still using seasonal help we have to get rid of at some point. Or like right now, we're paying benefits anyways.
So you asked for 3 full-time, and I'm trying to find the right form in here, and it says seasonal 55.
Yeah, Sean asked for 3 full-time. I think he made a passionate case last year. I think he makes an excellent case this year. The seasonal budget was increased by how much?
88,000.
But that doesn't scratch the itch that Sean's talking about, and that is, in one way, seasonal briefs really well, but as we've discussed extensively before, you don't necessarily have, you can't just send somebody out there and they perform at the same level as somebody who's been here that knows it. You can fire and forget, if you will, somebody, and that's more subtle to measure, but it's a great benefit to Sean and the parks, and a lot of other departments can make this case too. So I was comfortable with the recommendation of the seasonal, but I'm absolutely, as far as recommendations are concerned, if the board values the support of Sean's request, either 1, 2, or 3, I'm very comfortable with that too. I don't think there's a wrong decision on this.
Can we support 3?
Do we have figures and numbers or anything?
Is there enough work full-time all year round, or would you rather have 2 or 3 extra in the summer when you have the grass cutting? You do not have to get rid of them. The only thing they're not applicable towards is our health insurance. We are aware that we are paying Kentucky retirement on them after the year, but we do not have the liability of the health insurance, adding more people to our plan. But we've got good seasons that we've kept and we've paid retirement. Something we also do in the bus system, but we do not make them full-time because we've not paid the health insurance for them. But we have added $88,000 to his seasonal pay, where he can have as many people he wants during the summer to help him keep all this mowed and the park clean.
Well, what do you?
Yeah, well, how much
And
would
just
3 be?
to clarify, we're not saying that that's the right answer.
No.
Right, that's the data points that we have, so.
And I want to take full responsibility on this, Sean. So I'm aware of the request, and I thought this was a happy medium, but again, I want to articulate, I don't think there's a wrong answer on this. And I'm very sensitive to sometimes that the silver bullet of seasonal versus, it's not always that.
In the very, I don't want to labor it, in the very beginning, probably 18 years ago, 17 years ago when I started over there, we started using seasonals. We hadn't before. And one of our things we used to mention, or the guys mentioned even, was we don't want to start using seasonals. That's how much the city didn't use them at that point. And we're like, well, we got to offset some of this work already. Because 17 years ago. And it wasn't to take place of full-time employees or full-time employment of those positions. Over time, we tried to minimize our authorized positions where we could, and then took on additional duties and facilities where we could too. We did not replace those positions, and we ended up doing away with more and more because the seasonals sounded better.
Right.
Now we're more dependent upon, let's say, just taking the total number, what is it, probably 80% of my staff is seasonal. Versus, you see, like during the summer season, like it's kind of gone the other direction.
So back
During
to
this time of season, for
Commissioner
sure.
Blanton's
But to
question.
answer her question, yeah.
What do you want?
How much?
It
3?
goes right back, right? It goes right back. Yeah, I
Well,
think.
is it fair for us to, though, because we're in May right now, and there's gonna be future, would you like time to model
I
this
think
or
now's the
not?
time to work.
Sean's made the defense to me for the 3 positions. I'm comfortable, we had a lot of discussions on what the right number looks like. And, I mean, we could analyze it for a year if we want to afford that. It is a big cost. You're talking,
No, I
I
just
think
think
we
next
need it
time
now.
we vote,
I
so
think
they
we
have
need
it on
it.
paper.
I think
Well,
we
this
need
has
to
got
move
either
on
way.
it.
I mean, listening
I
to
think it needs
Sean,
3 different,
and
right?
that's kind of
We've got the
startling that
money.
we have less full-time staff now, and we've certainly expanded the
Just
recreation system.
asking them to do more and more
I
and
think
more,
someone
less
asked,
and less
can
and
we
less.
afford it? And the answer is yes. I think we would just reduce some of the seasonal pay, and then whatever fractional amount that is to get them to full-time.
Yep.
Well, you know, we listen to our other department
It
heads
could be
when they say we're
seasonal.
overworked, like Steve Cole, like the finance department, and we're listening to you. And I think, why do we need to reduce does it come out even if we start reducing the seasonals? We give you 3, I think we ought to give you 3, that's what you're asking. And you hire seasonals as you see fit.
Parks have grown, think about
Yes,
15 years.
more responsibility.
More responsibility.
If I go back, and I guess just to help, I mean, or not help, 15 years ago, if I had 12 full-time 15 years ago, I didn't have a cemetery, I didn't have a riverfront, I didn't have, those are just the first 2, right? What we're doing downtown with the special
Yeah.
events and things
You
like that.
didn't have 65 lots where
And
we've torn
forget-
down houses.
And weedy lots, and so, yeah, so now,
And weedy
we have
lots.
less than what we picked that
Weedy
up.
lots,
So
man.
it's-
Yeah.
It's difficult. I see it on the guys, and to the city manager's point, it's something we come back with each year, and now it's kind of like, you get over there and you see that cost.
So how do we move on this as fast as we can? Because now
Just, I mean,
now's when weeds are it's,
He doesn't have to reduce his seasonal, because I think our health insurance proposals that they have in will cover the health insurance for the 3 people. And Tony even put seasonal help for him at the riverfront to maintain the riverfront and maintain Oliverio.
Yeah.
Because we're going to put a new playground in Oliverio and have restrooms at Oliverio. So Tony increased significantly the seasonal work where he can have seasonal workers at those 2 places. So the only thing that we need to add to the 3 is we can switch it from seasonal or full-time for the 3.
and then, but you'd have, well, maybe not understand that. Because what I interpret this as an add to the authorizations. Are you recommending not adding to the
No,
authorizations?
that'll be something, but as far as the budget ordinance,
Yeah.
we can do it.
So
within that.
it would see a grand total of 3 added to the authorizations.
so how do we get that down as
That's
quickly as
just, I mean, we can just clean that up next week.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I do apologize.
No.
I just haven't had a chance to look at it, I just wanted to say it, so.
We have some other changes when Michelle does the job description, so it all can be cleaned up
Okay.
at that same time.
All right.
Thank you, Sean.
Absolutely.
Okay, we're on the last fund, the capital purchase improvement fund. We have a budget of $11,173,925. A good news story of this, $7 million of this is grants that we've got from state and
Great.
federal agencies. So the majority of this budget is paid for with grant money. And then we have 4.1 million out of fund balance. We transferred over money from the general fund balance to fund these projects that we already had going. The fund balance at FY '22 was 6.9 million. There's no debt, salary and benefits are 0. Capital outlay is 11,172,925. And we have an audit, it's the only thing, operating expense over there. If you turn to page 29.
Of 29, Michelle?
Yep. 29 of 29. This is our final page. We have some asset software for the Mike's department to the risk manager and Jamie to actually keep track of our assets. The city building HVAC and windows, this is 50% of the cost. This is a rebudgeted item. We have entry signs into the city for $225,000. Kiosk pay stations, they will come in next year. They've been ordered, but they'll be paid out of next year's budget. We have a street sweeper for $325. We have a storm sewer on Beverly Boulevard for $150. The Dawes Street Safe Routes to School, $1,480,000. The Winchester Avenue Traffic and Parking Realignment and Streetscape, $5.5 million. We have budgeted for phase 3 of Dixon Street, $650,000. We have a patrol vehicles, 3. We have a tactical response and rescue vehicle, $290,000. We have a progress payment on the aerial truck that you just approved. The payment is due in full on, when we receive it in 36 months.
One question about that, because I
Yeah.
meant to say, ask you yesterday, and I didn't. For those, I mean, I know a lot of mobile equipment, but there's a lot that I don't know. And like that one, if, maybe you guys, you're just, I mean, on one line of what exactly those.
For
equipment.
which one?
Well, any of them. I mean, a I know what a Bobcat
So
is, I
the-
know what a Bearcat is.
Well, it's a mobile air trailer.
It is actually, go ahead, Tom.
No.
It is actually a vehicle, it's a tactical vehicle.
A Bearcat?
I
Yes.
think the police chief.
I was going to say, let's let the two experts talk this.
With the big guy was up there.
Is this the grandson of the Bobcat?
Basically, your knowledge is for years, we've been trying to use an old ambulance to make tactical responses in for our SWAT team and to protect our officers on the street. With what's been going on here in the last 3 or 4 years, I've been working with Tony in finance to try to progress the opportunity for the city to purchase an actual vehicle that's made to do that. It's to protect my officers on the street, it's to protect my civilians that are in danger, that may have been wounded or injured, active shooter situations. I could go on and on, but it's a vehicle that will protect our officers. I could go on later on and talk with you about where this vehicle could have prevented deaths of police officers. We just had a recent incident where we have been graciously working with Huntington PD to use their vehicle, which is exactly what we're wanting. Trying to use it during a very deadly situation, and the vehicle was not available. It was broken down. So.
And conservatively, how many times have you used this in the last 12 months?
18 call-outs for SWAT, and it could have been used all 18 times.
You got a picture of this thing, I want to look at it.
Yeah.
I don't, that's more than enough for me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know,
It's.
I'll be honest with you,
it's a Bearcat truck.
I struggle with
It's model.
this because it's a lot of money, and I'm always a skeptic on this, is how much it's going to be used. Because we can always paint a picture of some crisis scenario, the sky's going to fall, et cetera, and I'm not saying that pejoratively to you all. But I think given the fact, and that's what I asked Todd, was what are the numbers last year? And this wasn't him stretching, well, we might have used it here. These were SWAT situations, force protection of personnel that may get caught in crossfire. So I think now's the time to do it. And really, Tony and I had some discussions on this, but the one that put me over the edge was when we asked for it last time, and Huntington's been great, we didn't have it. And so we'll maintain it, it'll be ours. It's got a very long lifeline, or lifespan on it. It's not like we're doing a lifespan replacement in 5 years or something like that.
It's $1.89 a day for the average lifespan of the vehicle. It's going to cost the city $1.89 a day to have this safety and rescue vehicle available to it.
Good
What are you
deal.
going to do with the old ambulance?
It's in the next auction.
I'll get it for Halloween candy in the park.
It bit the dust.
Demo derby.
Yeah, demo derby.
Yeah. Probably my last question to any of this is regulatory fee. Do we have a projection on what that looked like after the change on the alcohol laws? Or do we know how that plays in?
You shifted fast.
Well, it should have been.
That was a non sequitur.
I'm sorry, I just want to get this out of the way, because it should have been back in. I'm guessing it will stay. Okay.
Because you also have we have so many other cities, it stayed pretty consistent when projecting the revenue, because you have so many other cities selling alcohol that's never sold alcohol before.
Ah,
So you have Greenup, you have Raceland, you have Catlettsburg, and you have the county selling alcohol. So it's stayed consistent even though we've grown, because you have so many other people that are selling alcohol.
Todd, one question for clarity, if I can jump back to the equipment. Patrol vehicles at 3 puts you to a full take-home fleet for when you're up to all authorized officers.
That's correct. And then, well, no, take that back. On the 3, those may be the first 3 that we'll be able to start the revolution of the
Replace.
older vehicles out.
Yeah.
So remember, we talked about having the old
Rotate
APD
them out.
vehicles going into this parking lot for, and you see we got some hoopsters out there, so,
Hooties?
yeah. So Todd's focused on
You
that.
said Hooties?
We're waiting on some that's fitting now, so.
I think you said Hooties.
Forgotten about those. If they're not here, I don't see them, and they're not part of my counting process. But at this point, in the last 2 years that we've had this, I have been able to put vehicles back into the city fleet. Maybe minor repairs or whatever, but there's more coming. If I can find a used vehicle. Finding a used vehicle right now for a detective is extremely hard.
Tough in general.
Sean loves a sedan.
Well, how about that hearse?
Wait.
I'm a detective, that ought to look cool.
Our additional officers were the resource officers, correct?
Yeah.
That's correct.
Did we figure out
We
what a
will
mobile
move
air
forward.
trailer
Yeah.
is? Yes.
Yeah.
No,
Awesome, the city manager.
Pardon?
Probably not the dog.
Floor's yours.
I
You want me
think
to
we
wrap it
just have
up?
one more question. What's
Oh.
a mobile air trailer?
Yeah, mobile air trailer, what is that?
That's the aerial trucks.
That's the,
Oh.
that's the
Okay.
The mobile air trailer that you see listed in the budget is actually a grant that we have applied for. What this does, of course, when we respond to a fire, we have so much of a supply of air on that each firefighter wears with their air pack. Usually lasts typically 30 to 40 minutes, depending upon the task you're doing. This would give us the ability to, we do carry extra cylinders on each of our vehicles that are switched out. And then currently, we cannot refill those bottles until we get back to the station. This would provide a trailer that we could bring to the scene and actually actively fill bottles right there in case an incident was to go long-term. We would have somewhat of a better air supply to pull from to keep us moving.
Thank
But it
you.
is part of the grant that we applied for. And one of the things that drove the effort to apply for it was the fact that it's kind of a higher priority item this grant cycle, and we don't have any means of doing that with any of our vehicles.
Great. One more question. Brush attack?
Is
that yours too?
The brush attack truck, that was also a grant that we have applied for this cycle. Again, this was a high priority item. It is a vehicle that we currently don't have access to within the city limits. If we need something of that type, we have to reach out to our neighboring departments to get it. With the way our landmass come up and our incidents, it kind of helped us in justifying a need for it. It's basically a 1.5 ton pickup truck with a pump and about 200 to 300 gallons of water.
So do we have a lot of brush fires?
Do we have a lot? Most of the ones that we get to are quickly contained due to our quicker responses. We have had several that have challenged our resources. I can think of the last one up above Simpson Road, Crescent Street, that hillside on actually the backside of the TV station down off 31st and Bath, up on that hillside. That was a very challenging incident for us. We had to call multiple departments in to assist us. Also, access to those areas.
Okay.
We do have areas within the city limits, we've got road area, places like that, that could provide challenges to us if we do have that type of incident there. Our vehicles that we currently have, we would have to extend hose lines to that point. We're not really able to take the vehicle off-road this would give us a vehicle that if we had a Jeep trail or something like that, we could actually access the area.
One more question, and I'm sorry, just was thinking about it while you were talking. So what's in this capital outlay, is that what would be the cost to the city? Should we get the grant, or is that the total cost?
That's the total cost. Most of these grants require anywhere from 10 to 20% matching. Typically, I don't have that right off the top of my head on those two grants.
So my question was, if we didn't get the grant, would we get the truck? But yes, we would, and
No.
then there's money for it.
No, there's money for the match only. It's part of the 7 million, and it's $35,000 for our portion for the truck. We would have to allocate the funds if we did not get the grant for the 2 fire department trucks.
That's what I'm at.
Yes, yes.
That's what I'm asking. So what's in this list is for the full amount, should we not get the grant? There would be money there
The
for
brush
it.
track trucks is
The
$350,000.
only thing that is in the budget is $35,000.
Which is the
What?
match.
It is the match. If we do not get the grant, we would have to allocate the $300,000.
Oh, this makes it seem as if that's budgeted.
Yeah, it says $350.
It is the full budget amount, but we
But
also.
it includes
have-
revenue.
Highlight of
The grant revenue is part of the 7 million.
Oh, I see,
Okay.
thank you. Okay.
Thank you.
All right.
That's the part I was missing.
But you all are putting 450,000 towards the aerial truck in full this year. So
Right.
Do we pay other communities, like when we use that truck in Huntington, do we pay them for that? No, okay.
No,
I just thought it, because we're having like this fleet of attack vehicles, like maybe we could like.
There's other issues that go with that each time.
Gotcha,
so.
that's good.
And a lot of times with our services, we also reciprocate those services
Reciprocate.
from time to time.
Gotcha.
When our neighbors need that.
And like with the aerial truck, we have done capital planning. This would be the 3rd year we've saved money to be able to fund that truck.
Okay.
So that's part of the fund balance every year. So rather than the whole 2 million, we started 2 years ago setting aside money in fund balance that we know we had to purchase this truck. That concludes everything we have with the budget. We do, if you all want to make changes, we do have the budget ordinance and some ordinances ready. If you all don't want to come back and have another meeting for the 2nd reading, we can do the 2nd reading on the regular meeting.
Well, can we do that with the adjustments made for parks?
Yes, parks will be made within itself,
Okay.
because the total is correct.
Well, do I have a motion on the floor to go ahead and accept the budget?
Second.
Okay, any discussion? I just want to say quickly, my thanks, or my board's thanks to Tony and Michelle and the finance department and all of our staff for the long, hard process of getting your numbers together. In past budgets, I think it's been about our fiscal plan, but this budget represents our people. With an increase in pay and adding positions, it shows we're dedicated to making sure our city continues to operate with the best people, and we're proud of you all, and we thank you.
And it's really a good budget.
We thank you all.
I mean,
Just one more thing, if I can, I would like to recap just real quick, the PDA, looking at reassessing that. I'm just going off some of my notes, just make sure I have it correct. Section 8, looking at Boyd County, share, expand ABS, possibly to Boyd County, Camp Landing, parking garage, looking from the lining, and 3 full-time park workers.
That about got it.
Did you say the lighting?
Yes.
And then the other is the expense trending that you'd asked for.
Any other discussions?
Well, I thank you all too. The last couple of years, looking at this process, the new guy in the mix, I really am pleased the way this year has went.
This year,
because
yeah.
You guys, I think the best scenario for you all of you, all of the staff to do your jobs is the way you just did it, and things aren't introduced and thrown in, Obviously, everybody has the ability to do that, the right to do that if they want. But the less of that happens, the more you all can plan strategically. And so I think that the more that we stay like that, the better we can, the better we'll be in the future. So the last little tidbit I noticed also for the cemetery was burials have went from, in the last 3 years, 100 to 80 to 60.
We talk about this every year, about advertising for the cemetery, and it's like we forget about it after that. And I know we do some advertisements, I've seen them, but I don't,
That number, I guess, can't go negative. You can take it.
Well, and I don't expect our Facebook page to be advertising where you can be
Yeah.
buried. So it's one of those weird things.
It
that
is
promote.
weird. And it's,
Yeah.
and again, it's one of those funds that we know is probably never gonna make us any money.
Yeah.
But thank you, City.
We'll get William Shatner to make a commercial when he's here.
Hey, I just want to say this too. This shows we're all focused on the same goals, continuing from last year on our infrastructure and our big projects that need to be done. I mean, I think that's a big part of why we're not throwing things in. We're all concentrating on getting these things done for the citizens, for the city, for everything. So, yeah, let's get on it, man. We're ready to
Good
go.
job.
We have the
Good
motion,
budget.
the second on the floor. Any
Yeah, I
other
second it.
discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Okay.
We have actually a few other ordinances that go along with the budget. We literally want to save you all another meeting. Andrew has the alcohol.
Ready to read 'em?
The bank
got all
franchise,
four of them
and the
ready.
salary chart to update for
All right,
the
let's
rest.
do it.
Okay, so for the first one, first reading and approval of an ordinance entitled, an ordinance of the City of Ashland, Kentucky, approving and adopting the 2023-2024 budget and appropriating revenues on hand and to be received during the year 2023-2024 for the payment of the expenses of the City of Ashland for the 12-month period beginning July 1, 2023 and ending June 30, 2024, and repealing all ordinances and parts of ordinances in conflict herewith.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, the next one is first reading and approval of an ordinance entitled, an ordinance of the City of Ashland, Kentucky, fixing the tax levy for the year 2023 payable in the year 2024 on the bank deposits franchise tax for revenue purposes by the City of Ashland.
So moved. Second.
Okay. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Next is an ordinance, first reading and approval of an ordinance entitled, an ordinance of the City of Ashland, Kentucky, fixing the regulatory license fee at 4% of the gross receipts from the sale of alcoholic beverages within said city during the fiscal year July 1, 2023 through June 30, 2024, as authorized and imposed by Section 24 of Ordinance Number 8, Series of 2021, known and cited as the Alcohol Beverage Control Ordinance for the City of Ashland, such proceeds to be used to reimburse the city for expenses related to the sale of the alcohol beverages therein.
So moved.
Okay. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
And the last one, I believe, first reading and approval of an ordinance entitled, an ordinance of the City of Ashland, Kentucky, amending the salary chart of the classification and compensation plan as adopted by Ordinance Number 31, Series of 2023, as previously amended.
Any discussion?
This is for the 5.1%?
Yes.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure.
All in favor?
Aye.
Sodium permanganate.
So we're good on.
Did Jim put you up to that? I feel like Jim put you up
All
to
right, do we
that.
have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
We are adjourned. Thank you all.
Hands in the middle.